Joe Biden's tax plan. We've all heard about it, but what is it actually about? Well, on the 28th of April, Biden announced his third plan designed to help the United States recover after the coronavirus lockdowns. The three plans, the American Rescue Plan, the Jobs Plan, and the Family Plan, are all proposals for tax changes that are going to affect millions across the US. Now, we're going to go through these proposals, look at what they are, who they're going to affect, and everything in between. So to start off, we just need to know what the proposals actually are. Well, the top level federal income tax rates are going to be changed from 37% to 39.6%. The corporate tax rate is going to go up from 21% to 28%. And finally, taxpayers with incomes of over $1 million a year are going to see their capital gains subject to a new 43.4% tax rate. So as you can see, these are actually pretty large increases, more than doubling the capital gains tax rate. And increasing federal income tax rates to basically 40% means that a lot of people are going to be paying over 50% of their income to the government every year, especially when people are paying for things like Obamacare and state taxes on top of that. But despite those headline figures, there are a few things to consider. Firstly, these changes could be retroactive, though we don't actually know if they're going to be at the moment. Now, this means that if you make a lot of money this year, by selling your stocks or making a good investment, you could have to pay those higher levels of tax even if you realise those gains this year and the tax changes don't come into effect until next year. If these changes are made retroactive, you would still have to pay those higher rates of tax, as the government would just roll back the rules. This would make it really difficult to avoid paying these taxes, as you couldn't just sell all your assets earlier before the tax rules come into change, and this would make it really difficult to get around them. Now, this is really quite unlikely. It would be ridiculously unpopular and would be seen as an unfair move by pretty much everyone in the United States. So it's definitely not a sure thing. It's definitely not certain. The next thing to note is that these taxes would be marginal. Now, this means that only those earning over a certain amount would have to pay those higher rates of tax. So if you earn over $400,000 in income, you're probably going to end up paying more tax. Or if you receive over $1 million in capital gains each year, again, you're probably going to be paying a lot more in tax. But on the surface, it looks like poorer people who aren't making that kind of money aren't going to have their tax increased. But that's not quite true either. The media's reports right now are saying that only those wealthy people earning over 400k or $1 million a year are going to be affected. But they are also planning to cut a bunch of tax credits, so families all across the board are going to be impacted. Child tax credits and child care tax credits are both going to be cut, which means that any family which has children is going to be paying more in tax every year, no matter how much you earn. So why is Biden doing this? It's pretty much just to drive support for the Biden administration. He's attacking the rich, who he says don't pay their fair share. Now, that's a difficult thing to say, and it's a difficult thing to defend, because a fair share is subjective. Your ideas of a fair share might be different from my ideas of a fair share. And I'm sure you've seen thousands of people on Twitter, just like I have, claiming that the rich don't pay their fair share. But I don't think that's really true. You see, the top 1% in the US pay 40% of all federal income tax. And the top 10% pay 71% of all federal income tax. Now, you might disagree with me here, but I think that's more than their fair share. And I don't think they ought to be paying any more than they already are. So, if they are paying their fair share, why else might Biden be doing this? Well, he wants to make sure that he can fund his infrastructure plan, which is absolutely huge, and he's hoping that these tax raises will guarantee there's enough money in his budget to see them through to the end. But here's the thing, the US already has a huge deficit, and it's been printing money like there's no tomorrow for the last year and a half. So the US doesn't actually need to raise any money to fund these infrastructure plans. They can just continue to borrow like they've been doing for decades anyway, and they wouldn't ever need to increase taxes. So to me, it seems pretty clear that Biden's main motivators for this is political support. But there are real problems around these proposals that Biden wants to become laws, and most of them revolve around the Laffer curve. Now, this is a curve which shows that sometimes raising tax rates actually decreases total tax revenue. And this is because of a number of reasons, but mainly it's because it stunts growth and makes people poorer, but it's also because people change their behaviours to avoid taxes. Now, this is especially true for capital gains tax, and obviously Biden wants to increase capital gains taxes by more than 100%. The simple fact is that people will change their behaviour. They won't invest in companies, they won't invest in property, they won't invest in stocks, and that will impact the economy as a whole. And it won't just make the rich poorer, it will make the poor poorer as well. Anyone who has a retirement account will see negative impacts because of this. Now, obviously not everyone's going to behave the same way. Some people will continue to invest in the economy with high tax rates like this, but on aggregate, if you look at the economy on a whole, people will change their behaviour and it will be a negative response. Now, there are loads of examples of this stuff happening, most recently in the United Kingdom with the stamp duty changes, but the best example is probably France with their example of capital flight. Over the past 2 decades, since France enacted these huge taxes on the wealthiest citizens, the country's prosperity has been diminishing. By 2006, the government got to a position where it was raising an extra $2.6 billion in taxes every year, but it was losing over $125 billion every year as the richest left the country, packed up their goods, packed up their wealth, and just left. The simple truth is that people don't like excessive taxes, and if they're forced to, they will simply leave their countries. So this all points to the idea that Biden's tax raises won't actually result in any more money for the government at all. But is this even going to happen? Well, it's no secret that these ideas have upset a lot of people, and the Republicans and even a bunch of Democrats are going to be fighting these proposals tooth and nail. Biden also probably knows that these proposals won't even work for the most part. So fighting as hard as he can to increase taxes on the rich without ever quite managing to make it stick is probably the best outcome for everyone. He would gain respect from those of the left wing in the Democrat Party for trying to make the rich pay their fair share, but at the same time, he wouldn't end up damaging Americans' growth and their economy. So I think there actually is a really good chance that these tax proposals are just for show and that no one wants them enacted, they just want to use them to raise political support. But now, I could be wrong, so if this is all real, then what's next? Well, true to Biden's nature of talking the talk but never quite walking the walk, he's also proposed a worldwide minimum corporate tax rate. Now, this is an attempt to stop international companies from offshoring their profits in somewhere like Ireland or the Netherlands. But again, this is a pretty crazy idea and it's almost definitely never going to happen because it would just take support of every major country in the world. If the US really did want to push this through, they would almost definitely have to go to war with a number of countries. Thousands of people would die, and even then, it's unlikely that every country would abide by it, so you'd still have a country like Ireland refusing to raise their corporate tax rate and being the tax haven of the world. Now, that is something I want to talk about in much more depth in a future video, but it's a bit too long to cover today. So if you want to hear about that, then let me know in the comments down below and I'll be sure to get that video out soon. But hey, if you liked the video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know that you like the content and I'll make sure to keep producing it. You really don't want to miss out. I'm going to be making a video just like this every couple of days, along with a few other videos about investment books and maybe some weekly financial news as well. Thanks for watching. Until next time.